Welcome to Unmasking with Heather Diane, where we are peeling back the layers of trauma to rediscover self, and we are unmasking pain and reclaiming our peace. To stim or not to stim, that is the question. Stimming, if you're not familiar with the term, here is the definition according to Psychology Today. The term stimming, short for self-stimulating behaviors, refers to repetitive or ritualistic movements or sounds that help an individual self-soothe when stressed or otherwise cope with their emotions. My story of stimming is another great example of how my diagnosis brought new understanding of how my body works or is wired and built. I am what most people would describe as wiggly. My body is always in some form of movement, whether it is talking with my hands and making big gestures, or rubbing my feet together, or one foot shaking back and forth incessantly. My natural state, my calm state, involves some form of stimming. To better explain this, I'm going to go back to my first memory of becoming aware of my stims and how I began to mask what my body naturally wanted to do. Throughout my elementary school years, I was told countless times by teachers to sit still or stop moving. Sometimes it was a quiet, gentle reminder, Heather, you need to learn to sit still and control your body. Other times it was called out as negative behavior, seen by the teacher as defiance, as she had repeatedly asked me to sit still. When I was working independently at my desk, I would unknowingly start to move my foot and tap or bump the next desk next to me. When I was asked to stop, I'd be embarrassed and full of shame, as I hated to bother anyone or be a problem. But my stimming was difficult for me to control, and any time I stopped thinking about it, my body would begin to stim. During elementary school, it was not unusual to find me alone at my desk in the hallway, away from everyone else because I wouldn't listen and sit still. In the early grades, I felt so much shame when I got caught. The principal would walk by and ask me why I was not in class, and when I explained why, these moments were followed by a lecture of how not listening to the teacher is bad and I'd better start to be good. I did lose some recesses over it, and I remember how difficult it was to sit still for 10 to 15 minutes. And when I succeeded, my feelings of accomplishment would quickly be diminished by the comment, see, you can sit still, reinforcing for me that I was not a good kid. I would yell at myself, just sit still. And when I failed, the negative self-talk was cruel, and another factor in my negative relationship with my body. I felt so broken as I tried, I always ended up moving. My grade 6 teacher, Mrs. Swanson, was one of my greatest childhood gifts. She was the first teacher who I think saw my struggles and issues as possible learning disabilities, or at least something beyond my control. Mrs. Swanson took a unique approach. Instead of telling me to sit still, she would give me suggestions like, I can see that you like to rock and shake your leg back and forth when you're at your desk. I think it might help you focus, so I don't want you to stop. But let's do it in a way that doesn't bother the rest of the class. She suggested keeping my legs under my desk and to ensure that there was enough space between them and my fellow students' desks so that my stims did not kick or bother them. Maybe she was familiar with ADHD and autism, although I don't think I ever heard her use those terms. But she was the first person who accepted my stims as part of me and didn't try to change or stop these movements. It was a gift. I remember just finding school a little easier, the days a tad shorter, because I was allowed to be me in her classroom. I loved Mrs. Swanson because she loved me, wiggly, chatty, and all. And here's where my story gets a bit complicated for you and for me as I learn that stimming happens to people with ADHD. It also happens with autism, and stimming can develop in people with complex PTSD as a trauma coping and protective mechanism. Since I have all three of these conditions, it's impossible to know what the root cause of my stimming is, and most likely they all have a part to play. And as a 52-year-old woman, I don't really need to know specifically what is or what goes with what. Just understanding that my wiggles are not character flaws or bad behaviors, and that they're as much a part of me as my curly hair. This has brought me so much peace to my life. My biggest takeaway from learning this was the different types of stimming. I have many others have wiggles and movements that I do regularly or frequently that have been considered stims, and I had no idea. To name a few of my stims, lip biting and picking, nail picking, picking and rubbing my face, hand flapping, repeating words and stories, random humming sounds or short phrases, constantly fidgeting, jiggling one's foot or leg, squeezing objects such as stress balls, or playing with small objects, fidgets. I recently discovered a hoodie with a stress ball sewn into it, and I love it because I'm constantly losing my fidgets. In my opinion, unless the stimming behavior is harmful or causing problems, socially, academically, or personally, it should be accepted, supported, and no attempts made to discourage or change it. Unmasking isn't about becoming someone new. It's about coming home to who you've always been. Thank you for listening today. You are doing the hard work, and it does matter. Keep going. This has been Unmasking with Heather Diane.